Cool. All right. Just give some people some time to arrive. Can everybody hear me? Please comment below and let me know if I am heard, because it's good to be heard on a YouTube live. How's the tea, my friends? Oh, thank you, Mel. Awesome. Matthew, how you doing? All right, I can be heard. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, just chilling here for another minute or two, and just to give people time to come on over. But a pen and paper is usually handy, and any questions that you may have is always very helpful. Mel, a glass of Chardonnay. Okay. Morning or night? Cheers to you. Fantastic. Yeah, I got some cordyceps tea over here. So, enjoying, loving it, loving it. Cordyceps, excellent for any athletic performance enhancements that you would like. If you're an athlete or play a lot of sports, absolutely fantastic tea to add to your daily routine, in fact. 6 p.m. All right, good, very good, very good. And is that Elliot? Elliot, hello. How are you? Matthew, always an honor to have you here, my friend. We are going to touch a little bit on a few different things today, and have a bit of fun and kind of hang out, because I love doing these lives for that reason, just to hang out and see where you are on this transition that you're on. And any questions you may have, I will be answering those questions as the live goes on. So just ask that question in the comments section, and I'll do my best to answer that, hopefully right away. And just basically, I have a thought of the day, kind of a small little topic that I would like to share with you, if you don't mind as well. So I'm going to go into that. So should be fun, guys. And how have you been doing? Give me a comment below and just share kind of how things have been rolling in your life recently, the ups, the downs, the challenges. What sort of skill sets have you been applying from this channel or any of my programs at theanxietyguy.com? Wow, Matthew, 2 a.m. All right. Well, here you are. Worth the late stop up. Sure, you're going to have a nice sleep tonight for sure. Thunderstorms. Okay, yeah. I hope to be there fall and winter. Again, I miss England. But just comment below and let me know how things have been going, my friends. And it's interesting that, just to speak on my personal journey a little bit, it's interesting how I used to be pulled in certain directions to receive certain information from certain people. That was interesting. And you're here for a reason and to hear something here. So I hope to provide that for you. But what is even more interesting to me is the fact that your lower self or your unconscious mind tends to want to keep you away from any information that may lead to some kind of change. Did you know that? It's important to consider that. Sometimes when we label someone or something too quickly, that's not really the truth. But the truth behind that is that this unconsciousness is basically trying to keep things on repeat for as long as possible. And so if you find yourself confused, if you find yourself feeling like you're misled, it's important that you get back to a place where you're starting to build on the skill set of being less judgmental and starting to open yourself up to teachers, information, environment, and anything that feels new so that you can defy that deeper voice within you that's trying to prevent the change. So these are important points just to start on this YouTube Live, my friends. So just to go through how people have been progressing lately. Ashley Plyer, health anxiety kicking in. Okay, we could definitely dive deep into that today. Hugh G, you've been a huge help in my life and have given me a lot of reassurance. I'm glad I could do that, my friend. Great to have you here. Tawny, hi Dennis, seems like, this is a good one here. Seems like when one symptom leaves, another comes in. Yes, that's very, very common. Been dealing with shakiness, especially in the neck. How do I manage this? You don't. Thanks, I love the channel. So try not to think about it in terms of managing it, nor really think about it in terms of healing the symptom itself. What we need to really understand with these symptoms is every single one of these symptoms come with some kind of a signal or a message or a sign of some sort. And what's interesting with fear is that when fear arises and you have some kind of a freezing response to a fearful experience, the interesting thing about that is that that experience and all the information encoded in that trauma, let's call it, gets stored in some part of your body. And what happens is as the disinterest creeps in around one symptom, the subconscious or the unconscious part of us is very, very, very smart, overly smart, and will move that information and that symptom from one place to another. And this I've noticed very, very commonly towards the more so the end of the health anxiety or anxiety healing journey, where someone is getting to the point where they're rising above the negatives, rising above the fear, getting to neutral, and then getting to positive. So you'll see this with a lot of people where symptoms start to move from one place to another in their bodies. And the important thing here is to understand that we're not going to wait until the symptom dissolves or all the symptoms dissolve in the body in order for us to be who we're truly meant to be again. If you have that kind of mindset, then you're always going to be checking in to see where the next symptom is, right? So a better mindset is I cannot, or let's start with this idea where the anxiety as a whole, the anxiety as a general feeling, thought, way of being, does not dissipate until you become the kind of person that has defied the anxiety. This is something that is an opposite approach because a lot of people are waiting for the right feeling to begin living their lives the way they want to. And so with that mentality, what happens is we always find ourselves expecting the symptom or expecting an element of anxiety. With health anxiety and these symptoms in general, what I've found is that Dennis cannot heal Dennis. Dennis is the one that has these compounding feelings and emotions and the symptoms and the labels of anxiety disorders. So until I became or saw myself in the mirror and internally as someone else, a different name, a completely different identity, it wasn't until that point when I started to expect different things. Most anxiety sufferers go to sleep at night hoping that they get a good sleep, right? Hoping that they sleep well. Hoping that they get a deep enough sleep so that they feel relaxed enough in the morning so that they don't fall for the symptoms, so on and so forth, right? So what happens is when you begin to see yourself as someone different, in fact, give yourself a completely different name, a blank slate, right? A new, completely new start. When you start to have a fresh start, or live this afterlife that we talk about. And now I'm no longer Dennis, but I'm so and so. And what starts to happen is you start to expect different things. When you start to expect different things, that's when your body starts to tag along. So you wake up in the morning, and instead of expecting anxiety, you expect emotional neutrality, even if you're not feeling it in that moment. You're going through your day, and you're not expecting yourself to fall victim to certain challenges, but rather you're expecting yourself to deal with those challenges fluidly, right? As if they're nothing. So until you start to identify with somebody different, you will not expect different things. This is an unconscious process. We don't sit there and say, oh, I expect this symptom in my head, which has shown up for the last week, to be there all day long. We don't consciously do this. Anxiety is, the major parts of anxiety is unconscious, right? So give yourself a new name, give yourself a new identity, give yourself, one of the best things I ever did during this change process was I went home and completely rearranged my rooms. Took the painting down, put a new painting up, moved the desk from here to there, moved the bed from there to there. I completely changed my entire home. And what happened with all that change work was the unconscious parts of me was starting to recognize that there was a shift happening here. And when a shift starts to happen, the unconscious mind, or the lower self, or the ego, whatever you want to call it, starts to become defensive. And when it becomes defensive, fear starts to rise up into your conscious awareness for a short period of time. And as long as you stay on track, right, then the unconscious starts to align itself with the conscious and all the changes that you're making. So a couple things there in relation to identity, in relation to change work, in relation to symptoms, and we can dive deeper into this, my friends, but I've been having, let's see, MELPS. I've been having obsessive worrying and having a hard time seeing the positive in myself. Okay, that's kind of aligned with the big topic that I wanted to talk about a little bit today in relation to negative thoughts, in relation to pessimistic ideas, in relation to catastrophic thoughts and perceptions. The power of questions. Joseph, good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. I think I saw Ashley here. Happy Father's Day. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Good to see you, girl. Oh, wow. The originals are here. Fantastic. The interesting thing with this negative thinking stuff, right, is that it's not the negative thought itself that takes you down the rabbit hole of anxiety and everything else. It's the fact that the negative thought starts to branch from one idea to the next, to the next, to the next, eventually bringing it into a feeling that starts to rise, and that feeling is not a positive one, it's more of a negative one. And no matter what sort of feelings you start to experience in your life, you start to draw more of that externally and internally back into your life. So it's this rapid cycle. And in order for us to deal with negative thoughts and anxiety as a whole, we have to be very, very good at what we do in the initial moments when we start to feel something we don't want to feel. So you've got this, you want to look at anxiety healing as this 10-second window that you have when any element of anxiety shows up, even especially negative thoughts. You've got this 10-second window, right? Because what happens is, if you have a negative thought, or if you have an element of anxiety, a symptom, for example, what is a symptom? A symptom, an anxiety symptom, is a message. And imagine that you have a child who's 4 or 5 years old, where anxiety more often than not starts in our lives. Well, a lot of people don't realize that, but when we do a lot of hypnosis work and NLP work, we realize that. But you got a 4 or 5-year-old, and they're tugging at you. They're tugging at your shorts, your child, and the child is going, hey, this is really important to me. Will you look at me? Will you pay attention to this? and you look the other way, or you turn up the music louder, or you shove the child aside, when the symptom arises or a negative idea arises, and that's a signal or a message, and you shove it aside, what starts to happen? That child starts to scream louder and louder and louder. So the actual way to heal all of this is to go directly to it rather than look to escape it, run from it, distract from it, and all those things that we've been doing in relation to the anxiety. Does that make sense? Comment below. So it starts with a mindset, right? Now, does that help? Knowing that any element of anxiety, whether it be thought, feeling, imagery, or anything else, needs to be collaborated with, needs to be worked with, we need to go directly to the anxiety element in order to get to the source of the anxiety element. And this is not always easy, right? It's not always easy. I may talk about these things in very simplistic terms, but don't get the wrong idea, right? This, when you think about someone who's been suffering from anxiety for 40, 50 years and they don't even know about it, this buildup of energy and feelings in their body, you know, it's become so habitual, and now it's this reversal, it's this process of unlearning that starts to happen. So the mindset is this: we go directly to the anxiety element, right? And I've just actually started the process of writing my 5th book. And I'm not going to give away the title or anything like that, but the truth is that this is one of the final chapters in this journey towards healing the anxiety identity. And that last part, the last book here, but the last part has everything to do with collaborating and cooperating with the very things you don't want to think, feel, or what you used to be. And so this has certain parts to it that I will be writing in the book, of course, but the mindset right now is more than enough for you. Nathan and Christina Crawley. Is it Nathan or Christina today? Which one is it? So as we go about these YouTube lives, questions are fantastic. So when the symptoms hit, how do we directly go to it? Now, like practically speaking, how do we do that? Now, let's go into some practical stuff. Okay. Christina. Okay, good to know. There are 2 things that you want to be aware of when you're practically responding to an element of anxiety. Okay? And comment below if you understand what I'm talking about when I'm saying an element of anxiety, a part of it. As we tend to see anxiety as this huge monster and this one thing, but the truth is there are elements to it, there are pieces to it, right? And depending on what time of day it is or whatever, you may be experiencing a certain element of anxiety. Okay, Mel is on board. So practically, there are 2 things that practically you want to get very, very good at within the first couple seconds, if you can, of recognizing, consciously recognizing that an element of anxiety is here. Okay, and anxiety is internal, which means that when you have anxiety, you don't want to place the blame on anything externally. Internally, there's a program running all the time that says, depending on the environment or time of day, we're going to be reactive in this way. But when it comes to anxiety, please make sure that you're not blaming anything on the outside for what you're feeling on the inside, because it's the programs running on the inside that make you feel a certain way depending on where you are and who you're with. So anxiety is internal. Now, practically speaking, there's the number one thing that you want to do very, very consistently is this. But before I even go there, I want to give you a bit of an example of what this sort of physiological response should look like. Imagine right now where you're sitting or where you are right now. Imagine right here, right now, that you are no longer Julia, you are no longer Mary, you are no longer Tim, you are no longer Dave, you are no longer all the mental, emotional baggage, the traumas, and everything that comes with that name. You are no longer that name. Put that aside for a second. Imagine that you're putting that aside. And the person that's sitting here right now is done and has moved up the scales of consciousness, is done with negatives. Okay, that's you right now. You're done with negatives. You've hit that neutral place and now you're in a positive place. So you've overcome anxiety. It's gone. Now, if I asked you to sit right now, to sit in a way that is in line or in alignment with someone who has healed anxiety, how would you sit right now? Go ahead and do that. Sit the way you would sit if anxiety was no longer there, even if an anxiety element is playing a part internally in some way, right? Sit that way. Now, what would your shoulders look like? What would your hand gestures look like? What would your facial expressions look like? Go ahead and sit like that right now, or stand like that, or walk like that, if in fact you're walking right now. If you're speaking to me through here, what sort of voice tone would you have? Now, I want you to go ahead and assume the physiology of someone who has already overcome anxiety and put it behind them. You're no longer Tim, Dave, or anything like that. You are a new identity going through an experience right now of showing the deeper parts of you that you're no longer going into those negatives. So what would your physiology look like physiologically? If I came to your house right now and I opened the door and I saw you sitting there, right? Would I see someone who is suffering or playing the victim? Or would I see someone who has really come a long way and has healed anxiety? So there's two things to pay very close attention to, okay, within the first 10 seconds that you notice an anxiety element, right? One is your posture and the second is your breathing. I tell people this all the time. Everything else is kind of a sub of those two very important things. Your breathing pattern regulates your psyche, okay? So whatever breathing pattern you are engaged in right now will start to lead you towards automating certain ideas and thoughts and give priority to certain information. So it's incredible how a certain breathing pattern can affect our thoughts. People don't realize this. So the breathing pattern goes like this. It's related to low and slow, okay? So when you think about changing your physiology, you're thinking about your posture and you're thinking about your breathing patterns, okay? So what kind of posture would you assume if in fact anxiety was no longer a part of your life? It doesn't mean the elements of anxiety are gone. I'm just telling you to shift your physiology, your posture. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is low and slow. So you're breathing from down here through your diaphragm. And you're not doing it in a way where you're frantic about something that's upcoming in your life. Slow, low and slow means you're sending the signal all the way up to the top of your head and down to the tips of your toes that your environment in the present moment and anything that you're imagining as well is in fact safe. So that's the first thing. The first thing you want to be very aware of as you go about your day is the way you're using your body, especially your posture and your breathing patterns. Comment below if this speaks to you, and how have you been doing with this lately? If you feel like it's just going to happen on its own, it's not going to happen on its own, right? The posture part is something that doesn't come natural to us because a lot of people work in an office And with every certain posture has an emotional connection to it, right? So if I'm slumped over like this, I'm hunched over and I'm breathing very, very shallowly, then my body goes into a negative state. But if I'm back here and I'm practicing low and slow, it's very, very difficult to assume a positive posture and to feel badly. Okay? So that's it's very, very important. I don't care if you go to the local store and pick up a posture corrector, for example, which is fantastic for the time being. That's fantastic. But you need to assume the role of a new identity. You need to assume the role of having healed anxiety already before it happens. So that comes in the form of posture and breathing patterns. Bit of feedback here. I love how Matthew's kind of connecting with Mel. That's great feedback. Matthew's an excellent role model for this stuff. You had a dream a couple nights ago about your posture lookup. Okay, cool. It does speak to me, Christina says, and have been expecting anxiety. Now, if you allow things to be random and you don't have some kind of a structure in place, then you will expect anxiety. You will get it. You will get what you expect. Okay, you will always get what you expect. So if I'm Jamie Lewis, I'm on week 1, day 5 of your program. Congratulations. Fantastic. You keep going because now you've got a very powerful structure to follow. Now, the trouble is this, that we live in a modern world where everything that we want can be at our fingertips right away. And anxiety healing tends to kind of pick up on that same scenario often. And a lot of people look for these quick fixes. So when you change your posture and when you change your breathing patterns, a lot of people go, well, I'm still feeling anxiety. That's not the point. That's not the point. The point of this is not to get rid of anxiety. If you continue to see it in that way, the anxiety sticks around. Remember, we're healing the identity, right? We're starting new. We're sending different signals out into the world. Therefore, the anxiety lessens and disappears. You see the difference here, right? Nothing you do should be targeted at healing anxiety, if that makes sense. Nothing you do should be targeted at healing anxiety directly. There are, I mean, we are such complex beings, right? And we need to understand how the system works and how we can start to take control of a system that's been controlling us for so many years. So the first thing is the physiology. Let's put that aside. The posture, the breathing patterns, and of course, you're conversing with someone. How would someone use their hand gestures in that conversation to someone who has overcome anxiety? Put that in the past. What about facial expressions? How would that work, right? How would that look? Even where your feet are pointing, if you're kind of slumped in like this. The idea is to get rid of all the tension in your body, right? The tension is the very thing that perpetuates the anxiety elements. So that's number 1. Number 2 is this. Number 2 is because we fall for so many thoughts, and thoughts are an element of anxiety, we need to get very, very good within the first 10 seconds of recognizing that we're having a catastrophic or negative or pessimistic thought. We have that thought, right? That negative thought. And what do most people do with a negative thought? Well, they have a negative thought and they go straight to Netflix and I don't want to think about this right now. So they try to distract themselves. They go to their phone. They call somebody. I need help right now. I need help. I need help, right? So they give up their own power to somebody else. So there's a lot of these types of things that people do when they have an element of anxiety in relation to a negative thought. Here's what you want to do instead. Ask your unconscious mind that is spurring on the thought a question. So there you are going through your day, and you are, I don't want to say like a spy or a detective. This isn't something that should feel very rigid and strict. This is something that should be a part of your life. The idea of becoming mindful of when a negative thought arises, right? Like a lot of people eat something sour, Christina. Okay, well that's something that specific to you that you do. A lot of people do a lot of different things when they get those negative thoughts, but most of them have to do with distractives. So what we want to do is we want to ask a question in that moment, because what's our goal? What's our goal? Our goal is not to go from the child within us that's tugging on our shirt or our shorts, right, and look the other way. If the child, the inner child, is tugging and giving us a signal in the form of a negative thought, we look at the child. We deal with the child, not in an aggressive, rageful manner, because that just continues the process of fear. But we're trying to understand, we're trying to collaborate with, we're trying to build a new relationship with the unconscious parts of us that spur on anxiety. Yes? Comment below if you're getting this. So, in the first couple seconds where you recognize a negative thought, you ask a question. Here's a very, very good question. But first of all, before I go into the question, what are your thoughts made out of? What are the thoughts that you unconsciously think made out of? Some will say energy, some will say past experience, they're made out of fear, but here's what your thoughts are made out of, okay? What you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you taste, what you smell. Your thoughts are made out of your senses. So here's a very important thing to become aware of. If you change the way you see, hear, feel, taste, or smell something, then you're reprogramming yourself, moving out of fear and towards a more loving place. You need to get this. Because how do a lot of people talk in terms of their anxiety, right? I can't see a way out of anxiety. What did I just do? I can't see. I'm using a part of my senses, or a visual there. I can't see a way out of anxiety. I can't seem to feel any progress. You hear that all the time. I can't seem to feel any progress. I always hear myself speaking negatively. So, when I interact with people, I'm always listening to how they're speaking and what words they're using. That gives me the main sense out of the 5 senses that they use to describe their anxiety. So Christina says that her sense of smell is the hugest trigger of my anxiety. Now let me ask you this. What if you started to smell the world in a safe manner instead of a threatening one? Ooh. Now, this is kind of a sidebar that I'm giving you guys, a sidebar. I'm about to give you the questions, okay? But first, let's go into the sidebar. Let's break this up here. If you start to see things differently, the anxiety will start to lessen. If you start to hear things differently, the anxiety will start to lessen. If you start to feel, taste, and smell things differently, the anxiety will start to lessen, because that's the way that you are programmed. So yes, verbally you want to say, I see the progress that I'm making now. But before that, the idea is this. When I walk in to my workspace, all I see is safety. When I get into my car, all I feel is safety. When my hands touch the steering wheel, I feel safe. So as you're going through your day, when you use the language of your five senses, you are always reprogramming yourself, because now you're doing it consciously rather than unconsciously. No longer is it, I never see progress with anxiety, see. Now you're saying, I'm starting to recognize and see my progress based on my efforts. So you see how we talk to ourselves and other people? Okay? So let me ask you this question before we get into the main part of this, right? Is what sort of, out of your five senses, which one do you speak more often that keeps you in a state of anxiety? Which one? Is it seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, and smelling? And depending on which one of those you speak more often that keeps you riddled with anxiety, you want to start reprogramming that, don't you? Feel. Grant says feel. So as he's going about his day, he wants to use the word feel more often than not to reprogram himself to feel something different than what he's been feeling. Shelley Eve comes with hearing. I hear the safety in this environment. I hear myself making progress now, right? These sorts of things. I hear safety in my past traumas now, or whatever it is, right? Feeling great. Now, before I get into more questions, let me finish this kind of loop that I started. So, physiology is the first thing. You go through your day focusing on your body. Assume the role of someone who has already healed anxiety. Assume the physical role of someone who has already healed anxiety. That's the first thing, is the physical aspect. We talked about posture, we talked about breathing. Now, here's the second part, the negative thought, the negative thoughts. Ask yourself a question within the first couple seconds that you become aware of a negative thought. And the question could be this. You ready? So when we get a negative thought, it's like, for example, anxiety is just a part of who I am. Have you ever said that to yourself? Pay attention, right? Very important. I don't want to say it too many times because my unconscious might reel that in. But anyway, now here's the question that you ask yourself in this moment. Is this thought coming from me or someone else? I get the thought. I've already assumed the physiology of someone who's healed as I go through my entire day, and I ask myself the question, therefore stopping the cycle and the buildup of this thought. I ask myself the question, is this my thought or is this somebody else's thought? Could this be my mom's thought? Could this be my father's thought? Could this be my third grade teacher's thought? That I'll always have anxiety for the rest of my life. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go even deeper into the response to it. The idea is to break a pattern. So you get the negative thought and you ask a question. And a lot of the questions can come down to what? Like, for example, what is the real truth behind this negative thought? Okay? So that's a good one. That's a great question to ask yourself in the moment when you get the negative thought. What is the real truth behind this negative thought? You start to peel the onion a bit. Right? Who? Okay. Whose thought is this? Is this really my thought, or is this somebody else's thought? Where? Where does this thought really come from? Does it come from one particular experience that I had? So who, what, where, how? To me, it doesn't matter. What's important is that you ask a question to your unconscious mind in that very moment. All right? Now, I want to go through a couple examples, if I may. I want you to right now think, because this is a practical thing. We're going back and forth here, right? I want you to think about a certain negative thought or a thought that's been running your body, running your mind, running your spirit for the last couple days, if in fact that's been happening. I want you to think about the negative thought. I want you to write it down in the comments section, and I want you to write a question in relation to that thought that stops the cycle. Do this right now. Write down the negative thought that you've been experiencing, and write down a question. Write down a question that questions the truth behind this thought. Go ahead and do that. Write down a question. Yeah, exactly. So Mary Lou says, I'm not good enough. And so the thought shows up, and with that thought comes, who told me that I wasn't good enough? Who embedded this idea into me? Was it me, really? I don't think so. That's good enough. That's called progress. All right, so let's see what else we got here in the comments section. Joy McAllipe, I can't do it. Is this from me or someone else that's been telling me that I can't do it, right? Karen, when it comes to symptoms, a fantastic question. What do these sensations really mean? What is my unconscious side really telling me? Nikki, we can deal with that very, very well. If you have a question related to the fear of dying, we can definitely go into that as well. I was going to touch on that. Yeah, so Matthew's right there. Asked that so many times, what do these sensations mean? Even if you don't have the answer to it, it starts the progression of understanding the anxiety elements better. Who told me that? Very good, Malps. Is there any reason to live that? Okay. Excellent. So the two things, guys, when it comes to the way that we start becoming more mindful as you go through the day and reversing this pattern is, one is your body physiology, and two are the questions you ask yourself in the moment the negative thought or negative idea shows up, right? Now, if you get a chance, if you really want to get rid of this anxiety thing, write this stuff down, right? Write it down. Have a journal. Someone mentioned journal. Journal is fantastic. You want to have a journal. You want to write something down. People, when they think about journaling, they always think themselves out of journaling because they make it so complex. The simplest tools are often the most powerful ones. So a simple journal, either writing down your progress or writing down what you think the sensations in your body mean at a deeper level, yada, yada. It's fine. Journal. Just write down, because what's your purpose? What's anxiety trying to do for you? Well, your purpose here is to progressively become more aware in your life. That's your purpose. What's my purpose? Is this, is that? No. It's to progressively become more aware in your life. That's your purpose. People think they're aware, but they're not aware. Abs malps, you practice as much as you can, because today is most likely the worst you're going to be at it, because it's day one. You just started it, right? All right, so let's go into some questions. Any questions in regards to what we went through today, or anything else? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Any questions? And let's enjoy our tea here, or whatever you're drinking. I know that, was it Mel? Mel, how's the wine? Cheers to you. Karen, sure. Karen asks, can you talk about somatic symptoms? I have severe health anxiety due to somatic symptoms. Would love some advice on how to follow the noise in my, how to not to follow the noise in my head. Doctors say I'm healthy. Well, that's great, right? In regards to the somatic symptoms, there's a couple directions that you can go. And both of them work. It depends on the person. One is the fact that you see, as a mindset, Karen, you see the somatic symptoms as something that is bothersome but not life-threatening. Okay, so we start with the mindset. I have a symptom, a somatic symptom, and it's bothersome. It's not life-threatening. It's an uncomfortable energy. It's nothing to do with any kind of structural or physical issue. So first things first is the mindset. Okay, so you want to wake up every single morning reminding yourself that you're going to experience, not hoping that it doesn't show up, but you're going to experience the uncomfortable energy. Now there's two things to do with this. Number one is I probably need a little bit more information coming from you in regards to what was the buildup for the somatic symptoms. But more often than not, what is a somatic symptom? Symptom is a sign of potential emotional overwhelm in the body. Okay, so if someone is getting these these physical symptoms, somatic symptoms, and sometimes they travel, sometimes they lessen, sometimes they get stronger, it's very important that you understand that it's time to begin dieting the emotional body. Okay? And when we talk about dieting the emotional body, it's important that you utilize certain skills at certain times of the day to begin lessening the emotional weight. So the power is in ridding yourself of those physical symptoms is to see them from an emotional standpoint. Okay? So see the physical symptom from an emotional standpoint. See the physical symptom itself as an uncomfortable energy. Okay. You see the difference here, okay, from what it used to be. Okay. So we got those things down, right? Then every day, right? Every day, as often as you can, sit somewhere where you won't be distracted. Okay? Close your eyes. Target where the physical symptom is in your body and watch it. That's it. Now, this is kind of an intuitive response because I don't have enough information coming from you, only the somatic symptom itself. But what's interesting is when we start to watch our physical anxiety symptoms, we are no longer the victim because of them. We are no longer being led by them. Now we are collaborating with them. We're sending out the signal that says, I want to get to know this a bit better. I want to be here for you. Symptom, I understand you're trying to send me a signal, and it's safe to do so. Does that make sense? So those are a couple things that can get you started to heal those physical symptoms. Number one, it's an uncomfortable energy, is what it is. Okay. Number two is to recognize that the symptom, like we mentioned earlier, is like a little child trying to pull you and to get your attention, because at a deeper level, there's an emotional cause to the physical sensations. There's an emotional cause to the physical sensations, okay? There's obviously an element of stress here that's been continuing for far too long that is now leading to uncomfortable sensations in the body. Okay, so those are two. And number three is begin to work with the sensations and to get to know them better by sitting with them with your eyes closed, recognizing where it is. Oh, there it is in my stomach, let's say. And all I'm doing is watching the sensation of the symptom. If it's DPDR, depersonalization, if it's dizziness, it doesn't matter what the symptom is. The beginning stage is just opening yourself up to any kind of signal or any kind of message that the body's trying to send you that has an emotional root to it. And that's it. You watch it. How different is this than being frantic because of the physical symptom? It's a completely different direction. JL, Dennis, you helped me be reborn. Oh, awesome. Awesome. The afterlife. You gotta love it. I can never thank you enough. I have my life back. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? So Karen, write these things down. Okay, dizziness, thinking I have done real damage. Now remember, that's not a conscious thought that you're thinking. Today we went over the unconscious thoughts that you want to start questioning, sending questions to. Okay, so don't allow yourself to be the victim of your physical body. That's the biggest thing, is never allow yourself to be the victim of your physical body. Be like that detective. Be like that curious child that you were, and apply that curiosity towards what's going on with the body. It's because when you heal at an emotional level, more often than not, you heal at a physical level. When you heal at an emotional and physical level, more often than not, you heal at a spiritual level. And you realize that deep within all of this, it really is just feelings and energy. Joseph, what's up? What are the thoughts, my thoughts on separation anxiety? Trauma. In my experience, it created a false sense of safety and dependency on someone. Yeah, trauma, absolutely. That's a telltale sign of things from the past that are replaying in the present. When it comes to separation anxiety, I think it's very, very important to begin the process of realizing that this has everything to do with your inner child within you, and not so much the emotionally mature part of you or the adult you. So if the inner child is frantic about being separated by somebody, then that's his challenge that you want to start to reparent. Okay, because that's really all we're doing from a day-to-day basis, is reparenting our unconscious sides. So the biggest thing, though, is don't label yourself as having separation anxiety. Realize that this is a part of you that is replaying in the present based on the past experiences. But along with that, Joseph, I would go into healing the inner child reframing process on this channel. Do those reframing processes that have everything to do with the separation anxiety. And what do we always? Well, here's a more practical and quicker approach. Okay, take a few moments, and you'll notice that I use a lot of imagery. I use a lot of imagery with bodily movement, or somatic engagement, we call it, right? So when you do these things, you're really talking to the deeper part of you. Jody, what's up, girl? Good to see you. Good to see you. So separation anxiety Joseph has. Now let's go into this a little bit, right? And this can apply to many things. If Joseph closed his eyes, if he closed his eyes, and remember, what are the foundations of thought? Your five senses, right? So if Joseph closed his eyes and I asked him, Joseph, when you're alone or someone has just left and you get that feeling of separation anxiety, what would you like to see happen instead in that moment, right? Go ahead and see what you want to see in that very moment. For example, what would you like to see happen in the room that you're in feeling the separation anxiety? Well, I'd like to see myself kind of walking around confidently. I'd like to see myself maybe dancing a little bit, moving my body and enjoying this moment that I have to myself. I'd like to see that, right? Great. Close your eyes and see that happening, Joseph. And so he sees that. Great. And then I'd ask him, Joseph, what would you like to hear in that very moment? When you feel the separation anxiety, what would you like to hear in that moment? I'd like to hear my favorite song playing in the background. Fantastic. Go ahead and hear that. I also would like to hear myself kind of singing in the shower. Okay, go ahead and hear that. What would you like to feel? So we'd focus on those three things, Joseph. What would you like to see, hear, and feel when you feel the separation anxiety creep up? Close your eyes, go through the experience over and over and over and over again. Very similar to the image cycling process. And then once you're done, which won't take long, will take a few minutes. Once you're done, depending on how much emotional involvement you've had in that reframing process, what would I like to see, what would I like to hear, what would I like to feel when I'm going through that experience of separation anxiety? If I'm emotionally engaged in what I'd like to see, hear, and feel, even taste and smell is fine, then you're making real progress, because that level of absorption is very, very important. I tell this to a lot of people. I say, instead of unconsciously imagining the worst, start consciously imagining the best. Okay? Instead of unconsciously imagining the worst, start imagining the best. Christina, does anything at all trigger you anymore? Absolutely. I'm human. Of course, I still have a part of me that looks to protect, but definitely not at the same level as it used to be. Right? I think there is not one person on this planet that doesn't get triggered by something at some point. However, with the knowledge and experience that I've gone through, and God knows I've done this work on myself for over and over and over to heal me. When a trigger does arise, it doesn't last long. It doesn't last long because there's no need for me anymore to follow in that direction. Right? I just know myself, and I know this world, and I know the ongoing so very well that I don't allow myself to go in that direction anymore, Christina. But from time to time, absolutely, there are things that still happen and bother me, 100%. I mean, don't get it wrong, guys. On the outside, it may look like, oh, anxiety guy, and he's perfect. He never experiences any anxiety. It's nothing. That's not really the truth. I mean, yes, anxiety is no longer there, but of course there are moments where I get, sad. I can get, triggered in some way or angry in some way or whatever, but they don't last, which is nice. They don't last. Right? And that's okay. It's okay, this idea of perfection, don't bother. Don't bother. Constant and never-ending improvement is what I based everything on. Kanai. Constant and never-ending improvement. If you live by that, then all the pressure goes off, right? Felix, let's get into these questions here. What makes you not blame outside factors as reasons of your anxieties, Dennis? The reason I don't blame anything on the outside is because I've got a tremendous amount of empathy for other people. I understand how the world works. I understand how people work. And because I understand how the world and people work, there's no reason for me to blame other people, because when somebody goes through a certain, because here's the thing, before I go there, you get to a point after you heal anxiety where there's no more separation. There's no, he's him, he's her, but you get to a point where you're so aware and awake, you could say, that there's no separation between me and somebody else. I walk down, we've been here in Kuala Lumpur for a few nights, but I walked down the street yesterday, and I can't tell you how much love I had for people that I didn't even know. I'm walking down the street, and I love people, and I love them because they're going through stuff that I used to go through, and maybe in a different way, and everyone is dealing with the unconscious parts of them. Everyone is going through a difficult scenario in some way, right? So when the empathy arises, when you get to this place where you no longer see separation, which, as you can see in all social media and any kind of media these days, the goal is separation. You see it everywhere. This separation, that separation. So instead of feeling separated and being separated, what we need to do is come closer together. And so that's what keeps me from blaming and pointing fingers and such. Let's see here. Tame, I purchased the End the Anxiety program a year ago, but I'm not able to do it even to the basic thing as listening it fully. Is it unconscious resistance? Yes, I believe it is. I believe it's unconscious resistance to potential change. Because, you know why? And I didn't realize this until I admitted it to myself, towards the end of my journey. From an unconscious point of view, there's a lot of positives that come with fear. There's a lot of positives that come with anxiety. Anxiety gave me the opportunity to not work as many hours at my job. Anxiety gave me the opportunity that I didn't have to socialize with people or go out to these invited parties. Anxiety gave me the opportunity to not be creative, because on an unconscious level, the idea of being creative may lead to some kind of a mistake, which may lead to imperfection, and the unconscious part of me didn't want to feel the same level of overwhelm I did when I was a child. So the resistance will be there, okay? Will be there. But it's important for you to take the resistance by the hand, which we do on a daily basis, and to show the resistance that something different is in fact safe, and it can be safe, and the future can be safe, and the past was meant to be the way it was in order for us to grow the way we are. So unconscious resistance, absolutely, and you will come in contact with every moment, because the unconscious part of you is so opportunistic, guys. So opportunistic. Don't beat yourself up if you've got these negative thoughts, or you're saying negative things, or you're feeling an element of anxiety, because the unconscious part of you is so opportunistic and so resistant to change. The moment you don't have a meal at the time that you're supposed to have a meal, and your blood sugar levels lessen, all of a sudden the unconscious parts of you go, hey, it's an opportunity to bring him or her back into their comfort zones. Get back into your comfort zones. You don't want to be stepping outside your comfort zones. It's dangerous out there. What does that mean? All elements of anxiety are connected to protection. to protection. Can you imagine a bodyguard living in your mind, body, and spirit 24 hours a day of the day, every day? Oh my goodness. Once you start to feel that empathy, the compassion towards those elements, things will start to change, right? I used to have dizziness every day as well, Tawny. Let's see here. Absolutely. These sorts of lives are fantastic, just to be able to speak up about things freely and have people understand what you're going through. We are here not as individuals, but as a collective. And when one person grows, Mel, Joseph, Tommy, Tawny, Tav, hey, how are you? You know, when one person shares their progress, it starts to create a bit of a snowball effect, which is fantastic. And we are all growing together, and that's the way we need to see this. You're not an individual. You're not alone. You are loved here. You are a part of a community that you can be open with. And no matter where you are in the healing journey, beginning, middle, or the end, just understand that you're exactly where you're meant to be. And there are things that you need to understand deeply and start applying, and you are. So be gentle on yourself. Felix, we naturally believe triggers of our anxieties as reasons for anxieties. Is that true? I don't quite understand, but let me see here. Anxiety triggers. Yeah, we tend to, well, what happens is with anxiety is when we start to become less fearful over things in the outside world, we start to become more fearful of things in the inside world. So that's where health anxiety comes in, right? So when someone is no longer generally anxious, or you're going out in the world and maybe it's people or new surroundings or whatever it is, when there's less fear or less anxiety about things in the outside world, then this opportunistic unconscious mind will start to go inside, and now it's a sensation, now it's a bodily symptom, now it's these sorts of things that could potentially be dangerous. So yeah, absolutely. I get where you're saying. It's hard not to blame our capitalism. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard not to. It's true. The truth is though, ditto is this: is that you can't convince everyone. Nor, I mean, most of the world today are living in a state of robotic consciousness. Okay, so if you want to learn more about this stuff, I highly recommend David Hawkins' work and the Scales of Consciousness. Go and read every one of his books. But the majority of the world is living in a state of robotic consciousness, which means that they think they're thinking when they're not thinking. And most of the world rely on volition to heal their problems, and that is willpower. They bulldoze through things. They apply tremendous amount of will to their change or any kind of thing that they're trying to alter in their lives, and eventually they deplete themselves. But you don't want to be that person who's stuck in robotic consciousness. That's why anxiety is giving you the opportunity to become progressively more aware of what's going on the inside, more aware of what's going on the outside. Anxiety is giving you that opportunity. So it's very much a mental, an emotional, a physical, and a spiritual journey that you're on. John DeSantis, thank you. You have great content, by the way. I really appreciate it. Hypochondria is really miserable, Dennis. Absolutely. I've been in the darkest of darks. I understand. I also believe in law of attraction and fear, that worrying of health 24/7 would not necessarily. Where can we draw the line? What you have to understand is that with the law of attraction comes many different laws as well. right? In order for you to attract something, other things also need to be in place, which we don't need to go into today too deeply. But what you need to understand is that the the fear, as long as we continue to feed it and energize the fear, it is never ending. Meaning, yes, you may become less fearful about a physical illness, but then because you're still relating to someone who's fearful, you will find the fear at the same degree in some other way. So what you want to see is understand is that these are all things that are based around a fear-centered identity, a fear-centered identity. And what this means is that you have the capability and the opportunity to start seeing beyond the elements of anxiety starting today, right? Absolutely, Tav. Christina, that's very kind. Yeah, Joseph is a great example of someone who's gone through the journey and now is starting his own podcast and is making a difference in the world. So, praise to you, Joseph. Your comment, Zontia, let me try to find it here. Let's see, John, just get into John's question real quick. Zontia, if you don't mind asking that question again, let's see. Are sporadic low moods normal with anxiety? 100%, number one. And number two is that when you're rising from one negative state to another negative state, what tends to happen is you tend to find yourself in different negative places, right? And I laugh because I remember my journey back in the day, and I used to see all the negatives as being bad when in fact this progression away from anxiety and towards, say, sadness or low mood was actually a very good sign. And it was a sign that I was no longer fearful, but now I had a gray area to begin becoming someone different. So, yes, sporadic low moods is normal with anxiety, but it's also very normal when you're starting to make a transition away from fear and towards other states. So, what you want to do is you want to see the low moods as gray areas for you to fill in, meaning, how does the new me think in the morning? What does the new me do in the evening? How does the new me speak to other people in the daytime? This is the opportunity when you're in that gray area to begin filling things in, to getting to know the new you. Right. See if I can find that comment. Oh, here it is. Zone Tia. I am on my recovery road. That's great to hear. I just get that head band tight feeling when I'm not even anxious. I can be laughing and engaging with family. Is it? Ooh, just skipped. Is it trying to creep back my lower self? Absolutely. I mean, not only that, is our level of, with anxiety, our collective level of sensitivity is a blessing and a curse at the same time, right? So what we need to understand is with anxiety sufferers, there's a deep level of empathy that we have deep down and a deep level of sympathy and sensitivity that can be used for good purposes, but unfortunately, because of anxiety, are being used for not so good purposes. So we are very sensitive people. We are sensitive to people's words about us. We are more sensitive to the ongoings of life. And I believe that at some level, there's some kind of a deeper meaning to this sensitivity. So if you get the tight band around your head, most people that get it won't even recognize it, but you do because of your level of sensitivity. Now, instead of allowing yourself to do that, of course, the tight band around your head has a lot to do with overusing your mental capacity, right, to try to solve every problem, Zontia. So if you feel like that's coming on, you're not working from here as much, you're working from here too much, okay, and that will create that. So meditation is fantastic. Grounding work is always great for this to kind of give you some relief there. But when you start to heal anxiety, you do become a lot more intuitive than you are intelligent or intellectual. We no longer rely on the intellect as much, which is nice. However, to use your sensitivity, use it in good ways, right? Instead of falling for a potential signal of catastrophe that comes as a sign of your tight headband thing, you want to kind of use that sensitivity to help other people, to give back in some way, to understand people's problems more, or to understand your own inner child's problems more. So that's just a level of sensitivity that we as anxiety sufferers have to our bodies and everything in the outside world. And we can use that sensitivity for better purposes rather than continue to always check in on what the next sensation is and what it could mean, right? If that makes sense. Zontia, yes, it's me, definitely an overthinker. Where there it is, right? Always have been in my head. Makes sense. I feel that, Dennis. Truly good. So now you can start to, not overnight, of course, but start to kind of peel it back a bit and recognize that the overthinking is mainly there as a defense not to make a mistake, right? So we tend to overthink and we give priority to solving every problem through our head when in fact it just creates more problems. It doesn't give us any answers. So what you want to do is you want to move it from here to here and start taking action a lot quicker instead of overthinking things, and to make more mistakes consciously. Like, for example, one of the things I did was I would go to the mall and I would wear pajamas, right? Because before, when I used to go to the mall, I had to make sure that my socks were a good color and my shoes and were very squeaky clean, and I had the right outfit so that people wouldn't judge me and I looked really good, that kind of ego-based approach. But instead of that, now, or before, I wore pajamas, which kind of started to move that rigidity away, and I'd started to become more flexible. Like, now you can make some mistakes, Dennis. You don't have to be so perfect. So that's an element of that. There was a question here I missed. So Zonti, I'm glad that speaks to you. And this is Hagrid, Lemonhead. What do we do when we wake up not feeling like we fall from the hill? Well, let me ask you this. When you were a child and you were kind of rolling down a hill, was it fun or was it scary? Hypothesis. I'm really sorry for repeating as well. Repeat as many times as you want. I have been journaling for 2 years and it's made my guilt, shame, and anxiety worse. What are some ways I can journal that could help me? Well, sometimes what tends to be worse is exactly what we need in that very moment. So, hypothesis, if things are getting worse, you may need to look at that as signals and signs of something that you're not really aware of, that you need to become more aware of. So, if you're feeling more guilt or more shame and the journaling is doing that, that could be a good sign, because now it's showing you where the roots of your guilt lie. That's the question. Where does the roots of your guilt lie? Where does the shame lie? Where do the roots of your anxiety lie? When you think about yourself as a blank slate coming to this world, You had no conscious mind when you were in the womb and all the way up to the age of 5, 6, or 7. And so we need to understand that the beginning stages of this fear-centered programming started between the womb and about the age of 5 or 6. So what we're doing now is we are going, hey, you still live within me, but I'm going to show you that this world is a safe place. We can see, hear, feel, taste, and smell things in a safe manner. That's kind of the reprogramming that we're doing now. So don't see it as a bad thing. I believe intuitively, for some reason, I believe that it's exactly what you need to have. You need to kind of dive deeper into the guilt and the shame and start reframing those things. And there's a lot of videos here that can help you get going with the reframing process. If you'd like to go through one of my programs, go to theanxietyguy.com. Find the right subject for you. Let's see here. Dennis, Tony, there's one. Why do certain symptoms show up at the same time every day? Because you expect them to. Yeah, you expect them to. That's all there is. You expect them to show up, so they do. But of course, there's a fear of not expecting them to show up because you have survived, right? And therefore, a lot of the times we can't get rid of the dizziness or the anxiety symptoms because at some level we feel like we're being protected by those symptoms. Does that speak to you? Comment below. Right? A lot of times the idea of getting rid of anxiety as a whole kind of makes people nervous at an unconscious level because some element of anxiety had something to do with the relationship that you're in or the job that you're in or whatever it is. Okay? And so the fear of letting that go completely, right, can be a little bit, I don't know, which makes us we need to understand that are we really dealing with the difficulty of healing anxiety, or are there parts of us that are just not willing to let it go completely because of? Jody, thank you. What you expect will tend to arise, and I'm not saying that for health anxiety sufferers that expect illnesses because of their symptoms. That's a completely irrational idea. There's a part of you that doesn't believe in that, therefore most likely it won't show up. I believe that. And I'm not going there. But what you expect to happen from a day-to-day basis in terms of what symptom will show up or what type of person you're going to be at 6 p.m. will show up. Right? These are patterns. So again, is it the difficulty of healing anxiety, or is it the benefits of anxiety that you're not really fully ready to give up on? Most people are not ready to no longer be on their phone so much. No, most people are not ready to, if, for example, when one person goes into their friend group and they're the extrovert and they're the talkative one, and it's no longer anxiety in that very moment, although the sensations and symptoms of that positive moment mimic anxiety, right, hand in hand. So to get rid of or to distance yourself from that person, we're not ready. Most people are not ready. There's a lot of sacrifices that have to be made to become someone different and to heal anxiety for good. Are you willing to make those sacrifices? Most people aren't. Right? Most people aren't. Most people are not ready to think differently or to feel differently or to do things differently. I know I wasn't until I sacrificed everything. Nobody will change until they've suffered enough. That's the truth. Nobody will change until they've suffered enough. And most people think they've suffered enough, but they haven't. Because once you hit rock bottom, man, once you're in that deep, dark place and you got nowhere else to go and you're ready to give up anything and everything for change, then you'll give it up. Then you'll start to go in the right direction. Let's see here. Tanmay, Inner Circle. That would be the program I recommend. Inner Circle. If you're unsure of which program to do at theanxietyguy.com, do the Inner Circle. Because the Inner Circle is a program that doesn't just peel the onion to show you where the root causes of the anxiety lie. It helps us to begin reprogramming what's there at the deepest level so that what blossoms out of it is someone completely different. So I would do the Inner Circle. Yeah. And I gotta say I love you all. Hour and a half, very nice, super fun. Always love doing these. I will do my best to do more of these lives in the future. Inner Circle week 1, awesome, ditto, well done, well done. Excellent, I'm happy for you. I'm excited for you. What is a calming tea you drink at night? Oh, tea questions, I love it. Calming tea. Well, the most calming tea, like specifically for calming the nerves, holy basil. Yeah, holy basil. Chamomile's mild. It doesn't work as well as the other ones to me. Holy basil would be right up there. Lavender is pretty good. Those are good ones. Also, surprisingly, reishi, actually. Kind of, yeah, feels almost like a nerve tonic to me. But Zontia, I'm grateful for you. Thank you. I love you all. Enjoy your tea and make sure that you don't try to gather all the information from this live, because if you do, you're just feeding into anxiety. Just take this, just take this, and then tomorrow you'll take this, and then the next day you'll take a little bit of that, you'll take a bit of that, and then you won't take anything for a few days, and then you'll take a bit of that. Be flexible in your approach to healing. As much as you can, be playful in your approach to healing, because it's just you and your own unconscious side, right? And it's just you and your unconscious side, and you're just trying to do this. You're just trying to go, hey, I hear you, I'm listening to you, and I will guide you from now on, right? I don't put cane sugar in my tea. No, completely straight, always. I love you all. Remember that you are more than anxiety. If you know somebody who's going through a tough time, please share this video or another video from my channel and my friends. I really look forward to hearing your progress. I love those. Love you all. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye, guys.